The first time I saw a human, I thought someone had made a terrible mistake. My name is Krill, and I work as a xenobiological observer at the Galactic Convergence Zoo on Station Theta 9. It's a prestigious position, or at least it was before they decided to add the Deathworld section. Before that fateful rotation, my biggest concern was making sure the Peluvian moss creatures got enough synthetic sunlight and that the Krogar beetles didn't escape their enclosure again. Then the humans arrived. "You're joking," I said to my supervisor then when she handed me the assignment datapad. "Please tell me this is one of your pranks." Then's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, which meant she was dead serious. "No joke. The human specimen arrives in 6 cycles. You're the new handler."
Handler?
I squeaked, my voice climbing 2 octaves higher than usual. "Then, I've read the reports. Humans come from Earth. Class 12 Deathworld. 12. Do you know how many species survive on Class 12 planets? Approximately 0.03% of it." Was rhetorical. I interrupted, waving my forearms in distress. "These creatures evolved on a planet where everything wants to kill everything else. The gravity alone would crush most civilized species. The atmospheric composition includes free oxygen, which is literally combustible. Their star bombards them with radiation that causes cellular damage, and they just walk around in it." Then made a clicking sound that passed for sympathy among our kind. "The council approved the exhibit. The humans volunteered. It's perfectly safe." "Safe," I repeated, my chromatophores flashing anxious purple. "Right. Safe. Like the time we said the Vorgun spiderwolves were safe, and they ate through 4 feet of reinforced steel? That was different." "How?" "The human enclosure has 6 feet of reinforced steel." I wanted to scream, but that would have been unprofessional. 6 cycles later, I stood in the observation deck overlooking the newly constructed Deathworld habitat, trying very hard not to have a panic-induced molting. The enclosure was enormous, designed to mimic Earth's bizarre and hostile environment. There were plants, actual living plants with wooden stalks and green appendages that apparently created oxygen as a waste product. Suicidal vegetation, I thought grimly. There was water, dihydrogen monoxide, the universal solvent that humans not only touched but consumed internally. And the temperature, sweet merciful void. The temperature was set to nearly 300 Kelvin. I was sweating through my thermal suit just standing near the observation glass. "She's here," announced Rick, one of my colleagues, pressing his sensory stalks against the window. I forced myself to look. The transport container opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere and out stepped the human. She was small. That was my first thought. Maybe 5.5 feet tall, which I'd been told was average for human females. She had tan skin, dark hair pulled back in what the file called a ponytail, and she wore simple clothing that looked far too thin for someone from a Deathworld. Her face was soft, round. She had 2 eyes forward-facing like a predator, but they were brown and warm, and when she smiled at the transport crew she showed flat white teeth with only slightly pointed canines. "That's it?" Vex said, disappointed. "That's the apex predator from Earth." I checked my datapad. Her name is Maya Okonkwo, 24 standard years old, xenoanthropology student, volunteered for the cultural exchange program. Maya looked around her new habitat, and I could see her taking mental notes. She walked to the water feature and dipped her hand in, seemingly unbothered by touching the substance directly. Then she noticed us watching and waved, like we were friends. "Oh no," I muttered. "What?" Vec asked. "She's going to be friendly. The worst kind." The exhibit opened to the public 3 cycles later, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Apparently the idea of seeing a real live human, an actual creature from a Class 12 Deathworld, was too enticing for most species to resist. I watched from the observation deck as hundreds of visitors pressed against the viewing glass, chattering in dozens of languages, snapping holopucks, gasping in amazement and horror. Maya, for her part, seemed completely unfazed by being a zoo exhibit. She'd arranged her habitat with personal items, books and pictures, and something called a guitar. She spent her mornings doing what the file described as exercise, which involved deliberately elevating her heart rate and straining her muscles in ways that looked extremely painful. She ate food that would kill most species, stuff with complex proteins and aggressive spices, and she smiled at the visitors like she was hosting a party instead of living in an enclosure. It was disturbing. "Excuse me," a small voice said behind me. I turned to find a young Kelthian child, probably no more than 3 cycles old, tugging on my work suit with one of her tentacles. "Yes?" I said, trying to sound friendly. "Is the human dangerous?" The child asked, her bioluminescent spots flickering nervously. I glanced at Maya, who was currently reading a book while sitting cross-legged on the grass. Well, technically yes. Humans are classified as, she doesn't look dangerous, the child interrupted, which apparently was a universal trait among younglings regardless of species. She looks not. Before I could respond, the child pressed closer to the glass and waved at Maya. To my absolute horror, Maya noticed. She set down her book, walked over to our section of the viewing window, and crouched down to the child's eye level. The human's smile grew wider, showing more of those eerily flat teeth. The Kelthian child squeaked in excitement. "Can I talk to her?" the youngster asked me. "The intercom system is for staff only." I started to say, but then appeared from nowhere and activated the two-way audio. "It's educational," then said, ignoring my look of betrayal. "Hi there." Maya's voice came through the speakers, and I nearly jumped. It was strange hearing a human voice directly, melodic and warm and utterly bizarre. "What's your name?" The child's bioluminescence shifted to happy yellow. "I'm Pip. Are you really from Earth?" "I really am," Maya confirmed, still smiling. "Born and raised in a city called Lagos." "Where did you come from?" Pip asked, and I realized the child meant more existentially. "Like, how did humans happen?" Maya laughed, an actual vocalized expression of amusement that involved rhythmic exhalations of air. Several nearby visitors flinched at the sound. "That's a big question," Maya said. "Well, a very long time ago, Earth was covered in oceans. And in those oceans tiny little organisms started to form. Over millions and millions of years, those organisms evolved and changed. Some grew bigger, some developed bones, some crawled onto land. Eventually, after lots and lots of time and changes, some of those creatures became primates, and then some of those primates became humans. But Earth is a death world," Pip said, repeating what she'd probably heard from adults. "How did you survive?" Maya's expression shifted to something thoughtful. "You know what? We almost didn't. Lots of times. There were ice ages and volcanic eruptions and meteor impacts, disease and predators and natural disasters. But humans are really good at adapting. We learn to make tools and build shelters and work together. We're not the strongest species on Earth or the fastest or the toughest, but we're clever, and we don't give up easily." I found myself leaning closer, despite my better judgment. "What's the scariest thing on Earth?" another child asked, pushing forward to join the conversation. Maya considered this seriously. "Depends on who you ask. Some people would say sharks, these big fish with lots of sharp teeth, that live in the ocean. Some might say bears or big cats or venomous snakes or spiders. But, honestly, I think the scariest thing on Earth is probably other humans when they're angry or scared." The crowd went very quiet at that. "Humans fight each other?" Pip asked, spots flickering confused orange. "Sometimes," Maya admitted, and there was sadness in her voice now. "We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We hurt each other sometimes, even when we don't mean to. But we also love each other, and help each other, and create beautiful things together. We're complicated, I guess." "Are you lonely?" Pip asked suddenly, with the brutal honesty only children possess. Maya's smile faltered for just a second. "A little," she said quietly. "But I knew that might happen when I volunteered for this program. I wanted to help people understand that humans aren't monsters. We're just people trying our best on a really challenging planet." Something in my thorax tightened at that admission. "I think you're brave," Pip announced. "Can I come visit you again?" "I'd like that very much," Maya said, and she actually looked like she meant it. Over the following cycles, something unexpected happened. The human exhibit became the most popular attraction at the zoo, but not for the reasons the council had anticipated. Visitors didn't come to gawk at a dangerous predator. They came to talk to Maya. She learned to speak 17 different galactic languages, or at least enough to have basic conversations. She answered questions about Earth and human culture for hours every day. She demonstrated human activities like cooking and music and art. She told stories about human history, both the triumphs and the failures, with equal honesty. And slowly, inexplicably, people stopped seeing her as a curiosity and started seeing her as, well, a person. This wasn't the plan. I overheard them telling a council representative during one of their inspection visits. The exhibit was supposed to showcase Deathworld adaptation, survival traits, predatory behaviors, and instead you've created the galaxy's most effective human ambassador, the representative replied, sounding amused. The council considers this an acceptable outcome. I was monitoring the habitat's environmental systems when alarms started blaring. My primary heart stopped. Secondary heart kicked into overdrive. I pulled up the diagnostics, and my chromatophores went full panic white. Temperature regulation failure in the human enclosure. The system was dropping toward galactic standard temperature, which was fine for most species but potentially fatal for a human. Earth temperature averaged around 300 Kelvin. Galactic standard was closer to 270. I slammed the emergency stabilization protocols, but the backup systems weren't engaging. Then, I screamed into my communicator. "We have a critical failure in the Deathworld habitat." Through the observation window I could see Maya. She'd been reading, but now she stood up, rubbing her arms. She was shivering, a physiological response to cold that I'd read about but never seen. 30 Kelvin might not sound like much, but for a species adapted to Earth's temperatures, it could lead to hypothermia, cellular damage, system shut down. I was already running toward the emergency access corridor, grabbing thermal blankets and portable heaters from the supply station. Then's voice crackled through the comm, coordinating with maintenance. But I knew repairs would take time Maya might not have. I reached the habitat access door and hesitated for exactly 2 seconds, thinking about protocols and safety measures and the fact that I was about to enter an enclosure with a Deathworld predator. Then I thought about Pip asking if Maya was lonely, and Maya's sad smile, and I opened the door. The temperature difference hit me immediately.
Cold.
So cold. How did any species survive in this? Maya was sitting on her bed now, wrapped in her thin earth blanket, still shivering. She looked up when I entered, surprise clear on her face. "Krill?" she said, teeth actually chattering. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life, hopefully," I replied, rushing over with the thermal equipment. The temperature regulation system failed. Maintenance is working on it, but it'll take time. I started setting up the portable heaters, fumbling with my forearms because I was shaking too, though probably for different reasons than Maya. "You came in here for me?" Maya asked, and there was something in her voice I couldn't identify. "Of course I did," I said, wrapping one of the thermal blankets around her shoulders. "You're not just an exhibit. You're a person, a very cold person who needs help." Maya pulled the blanket tighter, and I realized she was crying. Water leaked from her eyes, which I knew was an emotional response for humans. "Hey," she said softly. "Thank you." I sat down next to her, maintaining proper distance, waiting for the heaters to do their job. We stayed like that for several minutes, the Deathworld predator and the xenobiological observer just existing together in the cold. "Can I tell you something?" Maya asked eventually. "Sure." I was starting to wonder if anyone out here actually cared. Like really cared. Not about humans as a curiosity or a research subject, but about me as me. I thought about that. For what it's worth, I was terrified when they assigned me to your exhibit. Everything I'd learned said humans were dangerous, unpredictable, violent, but watching you with Pip and all the other visitors, hearing you answer questions with so much patience and honesty, seeing you be kind when you could have been angry about being here. I paused, searching for the right words. "You changed my mind about a lot of things." Maya smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "You know what's funny? Humans are terrified of a lot of things too. The dark, the unknown, being alone, not mattering. But we keep going anyway. We keep trying to connect with others even when it's scary." The portable heaters were starting to work. Maya's shivering decreased. Through the observation window I could see a crowd had gathered, watching us. Among them was Pip, pressing her tentacles against the glass with worry. "Your fans are concerned," I said, pointing. Maya looked up and waved at Pip, who immediately brightened to relieved yellow. "I'm okay," Maya called out, and I realized the audio system was still active. The entire crowd heard her. A cheer went up, in dozens of languages and sound-making organs. They weren't cheering for the exhibit or the spectacle. They were cheering for Maya. Then's voice came through my comm. "Temperature systems back online." "Good work, Krill." I felt the air warming almost immediately. Maya sighed in relief. "Guess I should probably let you get back to work," she said. I stood up, starting to gather the emergency equipment. Then I paused. "Maya?" "Yeah?" "Would it be okay if I visited sometimes? Not as your handler, just as someone who'd like to talk." Her smile could have heated the entire habitat. "I'd really like that, Krill. I'd like that a lot." As I walked back through the access corridor, I realized something profound had shifted. The human wasn't the one being observed and studied anymore. We were learning from each other. And maybe, just maybe, that had been the point all along. 3 cycles after the temperature incident, I found myself doing something I never imagined possible. I was having lunch with a human. Well, not exactly with her. Maya was inside her habitat, eating something she called a sandwich, which consisted of various items compressed between slices of bread. I was outside the glass with my nutrient paste, which suddenly seemed far less appealing in comparison. So let me get this straight, Maya said through the intercom, gesturing with her food in a way that made several passing visitors nervous. You actually chose to work with exotic species. Like on purpose. My broodmother thought I was insane, I admitted, stirring my paste half-heartedly. Most Kelvorians go into computational work or station management. Safe jobs. Boring job. But you wanted adventure, Maya said, grinning. I wanted to understand things that were different from me. Turns out, different is a lot more complicated than I expected. Maya took a bite of her sandwich, chewed, swallowed. Such a strange process, mechanical digestion. You know what I love about this whole situation? A few months ago, I was sitting in a classroom on Earth, learning about theoretical alien contact. Now I'm the alien. It's wild. Do you regret it? I asked, the question surprising even me. Volunteering for this? She was quiet for a moment, considering. Some days? Yeah. I miss my family. I miss privacy. I miss being able to walk down a street without everyone stopping to stare. But then I think about Pip and all the other kids who come here, and how maybe I'm changing what they think is possible. How maybe they'll grow up less afraid of things that are different. She paused. So no, I don't regret it. A shadow fell across my workstation. I looked up to find Rick looming over me, all 7 feet of him, sensory stalks quivering with barely contained excitement. Have you seen the attendance numbers? He asked, shoving a datapad in my face. I glanced at the figures and felt my chromatophores flash surprised green. That cannot be correct. It is. The human exhibit has increased zoo attendance by 347%. We've had visitors from 72 different systems, including some that have never sent anyone to Theta 9 before. The council is ecstatic. Through the glass I could see Maya watching us with curious eyes. What's going on? She asked through the intercom. You're famous, Vic announced proudly. The most successful exhibit in galactic convergence zoo history. I expected Maya to look pleased. Instead, her expression became complicated, difficult to read. Famous, she repeated quietly. Right. Drek didn't notice her tone shift. He was already walking away, muttering about expanded funding and facility upgrades. But I know, Maya? I said carefully. It's fine, she said, but her smile was wrong. Too tight. I'm glad people are interested in learning. She excused herself and retreated to the back section of her habitat, the area with the small shelter structure where she slept. I watched her go, feeling useless, then appeared beside me, silent as always. She's struggling, my supervisor observed. You think? I said, more sharply than intended. The psychological evaluation team has been monitoring, being observed constantly, having no genuine privacy, being treated as an object of study rather than a person. Then's middle eye focused on me. It takes a toll, even on species less socially complex than humans. So what do we do? That depends, Then said slowly. How much do you care about following protocols? I looked at her, 3 eyes all blinking in that pattern that meant she was planning something. What are you suggesting? The council approved the exhibit to showcase Deathworld species. They never specifically stated the human had to stay in the habitat 27 hours a day. My heart started racing. Then, if you're suggesting what I think you are suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything, she said innocently. I'm simply noting that the facility has extensive back corridors and maintenance areas that the public never sees. And that tomorrow evening I'll be conducting a mandatory evacuation drill in sections 7 through 12, which includes this observation deck. For at least 2 hours, she walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there with my mind spinning. The next evening I stood outside the access door to Maya's habitat, clutching a visitor badge and trying to calm my nervous system. The observation deck was empty. Emergency drill in progress. No cameras in the maintenance corridors. Then had given me a window and I was either about to do something wonderful or career-ending. Probably both. I opened the door. Maya was sitting on her bed playing her guitar. She looked up, surprised, when I entered. Krill? Is something wrong with the systems again? No, I said, holding up the badge. I'm breaking you out. Her fingers stopped mid-strum. What? Not permanently. I clarified quickly. Just for a couple hours. There's an evacuation drill. No public. No cameras in certain areas. I thought maybe you'd like to see the station. Walk around. Be a person instead of an exhibit for a little while. Maya stared at me like I'd just offered her the entire galaxy. Then she carefully set down her guitar, stood up and walked over to me. Are you serious right now? Completely serious. Also potentially violating 17 different protocols, so we should probably hurry. She laughed. That strange human sound that I'd actually started to find pleasant. Let me grab my jacket. 2 minutes later we were walking through the maintenance corridor, and Maya was crying again. Happy crying apparently. Which humans did because their emotional regulation system was bizarre. I forgot what it felt like, she said, wiping her eyes. Just walking. Going somewhere. Not being watched. Well, you're being watched a little, I admitted. I'm right here. That's different. You're a friend. The word hit me harder than expected. Friend. When had that happened? We made our way through the back sections of the station, areas the public never saw. Storage facilities, mechanical rooms, staff break areas. To me it was mundane. To Maya it was apparently fascinating. You can just drink that? She asked, watching me refill my hydration pack at a station fountain. Without worrying about contamination, the station maintains galactic standard purification. Why? On Earth, depending on where you are, drinking unpurified water can make you really sick. Bacteria, parasites, chemical contaminants. She shook her head. We have to treat almost all our water before consuming it. Your planet is trying to kill you through the water supply. Pretty much, she said cheerfully. Also the air sometimes depending on pollution levels. And the food if you don't prepare it correctly. And the weather. And the ground in certain areas. And the plants. A lot of plants are poisonous. And the animals obviously. And the insects. Some of those are deadly. And I get it. I interrupted. Earth is horrible. Earth is home. Maya corrected gently. Horrible and beautiful and dangerous and precious. All at once, we walked in comfortable silence for a while and I found myself noticing things about Maya I'd never observed through the glass. The way she moved, careful but confident. The way her eyes tracked everything, constantly processing, evaluating. Predator instincts, I realized. She was always aware of her surroundings, even here where nothing threatened her. Can I ask you something? Maya said eventually. Of course. Why did you really come into my habitat during the temperature failure? You could have just sent maintenance robots or waited for the systems to reset. I thought about how to answer. Because you looked scared, and cold, and alone. And I realized that every time I'd looked at you, I'd been seeing the label. Deathworld predator. Dangerous species. Category 12 survivor. But in that moment, all I saw was someone who needed help. Maya stopped walking. She turned to face me fully and there were tears in her eyes again. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea how much that means. Before I could respond, alarms started blaring. Real alarms, not drill alarms. My communicator exploded with chatter. Then's voice cut through, sharp with urgency. All personnel. Security breach in Section 9. Unknown hostile entity. Initiating lockdown protocols. Section 9. We were in Section 8. We need to get you back to your habitat, I said, already moving. What's happening? I don't know, but a crash echoed through the corridor ahead of us. Something large moving fast. My chromatophores went full alarm red. Around the corner came something I'd never seen before. Roughly 4 feet tall, covered in metallic scales, with 6 legs and a mouthful of crystalline teeth. It moved like liquid violence and it was headed straight for us. Run! I shouted. We ran. Maya, despite being from a high-gravity world, could apparently move very fast when motivated. We sprinted through the corridors, the creature gaining behind us. My 3 lungs burned. My legs ached. There. Maya pointed to a maintenance closet. We dove inside, slamming the door. I engaged the lock just as something heavy crashed against it from outside. The door held, but I didn't know for how long. What is that thing? Maya gasped, catching her breath much faster than I was catching mine. I don't know. Nothing in our collection. It must have been smuggled onto the station. Another impact. The door dented inward. Maya looked around the small closet, her predator eyes scanning. She grabbed a heavy maintenance tool, something used for prying open stuck panels. What are you doing? I asked. If that door breaks, we need to be ready. Ready? Maya, that thing is dangerous. Yeah, I noticed. She positioned herself between me and the door. Stay behind me. You're the one we're supposed to be protecting. And you came into my habitat to keep me from freezing. We protect each other, Krill. That's what friends do. The door buckled. One more hit, and it would give way. I grabbed another tool, my forearms actually useful for once. Together, Maya glanced at me and despite everything she smiled. Together, the door exploded inward. The creature lunged. all teeth and claws in rage. Maya swung her tool like a club, catching it mid-leap. The impact sent it crashing into the wall. It recovered instantly, hissing, preparing another attack. I struck from the side using my lower arms to destabilize it while my upper arms brought the tool down hard. The creature shrieked. "The neck!" Maya shouted. "Aim for the neck joint." How did she know? Then I remembered. Deathworld predator. She understood violence in ways I never could. We worked in sync, Maya, attacking high while I attacked low, keeping the creature off balance. It was strong and fast, but we had intelligence and teamwork. Finally, Maya landed a solid hit on the neck joint she'd identified. Something cracked. The creature went still, not dead but definitely stunned. Security forces arrived 30 seconds later, finding us standing over an incapacitated alien smuggling victim. Both of us breathing hard and staring at each other in shock. "Well," Maya said, lowering her weapon. "That was exciting." I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Nervous energy, relief, absurdity of the situation. Maya joined in and we stood there giggling like younglings while the security team carefully contained the creature, then appeared, took one look at us, and her chromatophores cycled through at least 6 different colors. "I leave you alone for 2 hours. In my defense," I started. "No defense will help you," she said. But she was trying not to smile. "Come on. Medical needs to check you both." And then we're having a very long conversation about protocols. The medical scan took 20 minutes. Minor bruises. Elevated stress hormones. Nothing serious. The conversation with the council took 3 hours. I sat in the conference chamber, Maya beside me, while 7 council members argued about proper procedures and safety violations, and unauthorized habitat departures. "The human could have been injured," one council member insisted. "The human saved my life," I countered, and probably several other staff members. "That creature was heading toward populated areas." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Maya spoke up, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Because from where I'm sitting, the point seems to be that you're more concerned about your exhibit than about the actual living being you've put in that exhibit." The chamber went silent. Maya stood up. "I volunteered for this program because I believed in cultural exchange, in building understanding between humans and the galactic community. But I'm not a zoo animal. I'm a person. And if the only way you can see me is as a fascinating creature behind glass, then maybe this whole thing was a mistake." "Maya," the head council member said carefully, "we value your contribution." "Do you?" she challenged. "Or do you value the attendance numbers? The prestige? The proof that you convinced a Deathworld species to perform for you?" Ouch. That landed hard. "What would you propose?" the head member asked. Maya looked at me, then back at the council. "Let me actually participate in cultural exchange. Let me give lectures instead of being lectured about. Let me meet with students and researchers. Let me contribute instead of just exist. Keep the habitat if you want. I understand people are curious, but let me be more than a curiosity." The council members looked at each other. "And," Maya continued, "let Krill be my liaison. Full time. Because they're the only one who's ever treated me like a person first and an exhibit second." My chromatophores went shocked white. "Maya, do you disagree?" she asked, turning to me. "No," I said quietly. "I just didn't know you felt that way. You walked into my habitat during a temperature failure. You broke 17 protocols to give me 2 hours of freedom. You fought a smuggled predator beside me instead of running away." She smiled. "Yeah, Krill, I trust you." The head council member sighed, a sound that translated across most species. "Very well. We'll approve a modified cultural exchange program. Habitat access for public viewing will be reduced to 4 hours per day. The rest of the time, the Okonkwo will have freedom to move through approved station areas, accompanied by xenobiological observer Krill as her official liaison." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Additionally, the member continued, "We'll arrange for lecture series, educational programs, and collaborative research opportunities. Does this meet your requirements?" Maya's smile could have powered the entire station. "Yes. Thank you." As we left the chamber, Maya turned to me. "So, liaison. What does that job actually involve?" "Honestly, I have no idea. They just invented it." "Perfect. We'll figure it out together." 3 cycles later, I stood in a lecture hall watching Maya address 200 students from 40 different species. She was talking about human evolution, showing images of Earth, explaining how adversity shaped innovation. Peep was in the front row, bioluminescence bright with excitement. "Humans aren't special because we're tough," Maya was saying. We're special because we refuse to let our environment define our limits. We fell down, and we got back up. We failed, and we tried again. We were afraid, and we faced our fears anyway. That's not a Deathworld trait. That's a choice any species can make. After the lecture, dozens of students crowded around with questions. Maya answered each one patiently, enthusiastically. Peep tugged on my worksuit again. You were right, the youngster said. About what? Humans are dangerous. But not the way I thought. They're dangerous because they make you want to be braver. I watched Maya laugh at something a student said. Watched her make connections across species barriers like it was the easiest thing in the world. Yeah, I agreed. They really do. That evening, Maya and I sat in the station's observation lounge watching the stars through the massive viewport. Her habitat was dark and empty now during off hours. She spent most of her time in the shared areas of the station, living alongside everyone else. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me. Really seeing me. Not the label or the classification or the curiosity. Just me. I thought about the journey we'd taken together. From fear to understanding. From observer and exhibit to friends. You made it easy, I said. You were always just yourself. I was the one who needed to catch up. Maya leaned back, staring at the stars. You know what's funny? I came here thinking I'd teach aliens about humans. Turns out, you taught me just as much about what it means to be human. About choosing connection over fear. About being vulnerable enough to let someone help you. She glanced at me. About friendship. Deathworld philosophy, I teased. Universal philosophy, she corrected. Some truths work everywhere. We sat in comfortable silence. Two beings from impossibly different worlds connected by something simple and profound. Understanding. Somewhere in the station, another exhibit was closing for the evening. The Peluvian moss was getting its synthetic sunlight. The Krogar beetles were safely contained, and the human, the terrifying Deathworld predator, was just a person. Complicated and kind. Dangerous and gentle. Survivor and friend. Exactly as she'd always been. We just needed to learn how to look.